Thanks for watching. Today we're taking a look at the all-new Element Enduro Sendero Sport Edition, which is an entry-level, ready-to-run trail truck that costs $299. Thanks for watching. At first glance you might think that this Element Enduro Sendero is the exact same truck that Element came out with back in the day when they launched the brand, but that's actually not the case. If you look at, you need to ignore a couple of things over here. You need to ignore the fact that this one has independent front suspension. Also ignore the fact that it has a roll cage. But apart from that, you will be able to spot a couple of differences. So just for the sake of illustration, I'll go over those really quick. You will see that this one is dressed down just a tiny bit. So it does not feature the wipers, it does not feature the mirrors, it also does not feature the front grille. That is a sticker in the case of the Sport Edition. This is really a basic truck that is for people who are new to the hobby to have a cheap version of ready to run. And with it being cheap, I don't mean that they sort of like skipped on quality in any way. I just mean that they have taken a couple of measures in making sure that it is actually more affordable than the other version that you might be familiar with of this truck. You will also see that the bed is now molded along with the cab, so you can no longer separate these two, which I do think is a tiny bit of a bummer, because I like that about the initial Sendero, that you were able to separate the cab and the bed. But I guess that some concessions need to be made in order to get the price point down. I like the two-tone. I also like this slightly dirtier gray that they have going on the body. If you compare it to that primer gray that we were perhaps used to from the original, this is a really cool look. No lights are included, so it is very much a basic truck. Another thing you will immediately see is that these are all new wheels and tires. So this is Element's own pin seeker tire, which is not a licensed tire. It is narrower than the general grabber tire that you have seen on some of the other Element trucks. And I do think that it is a successful design, especially on this beadlock rim. They call this a Steely. It is a 1.9 sized rim. Again, it is narrow. I do like the classic look of it, and especially along with this body, it gives it a nice toned down, very neutral look. Also, the compound of these tires, it feels slightly softer than those general grabbers. So I also think that out on the trails these will perform really well. Now, my Enduro Sendero Sport Edition got knocked about in the box a tiny bit with some of the zip ties coming undone on its trip over to Norway. So I have a tiny blemish in the body, and I also have a tiny blemish in this front bumper. So it is hanging on by a thread. I hope that it will stay in place once I have it out on the trails. I do hope that this is just my truck that has this blemish, because I do really like the look of these front and rear bumpers, especially if you compare them to the original version. These new bumpers, they are a lot more set up for performance. So you have a better approach angle, better departure angle. I think it looks better. Overall, I'm really enthusiastic about it. I'm just a tiny bit bummed that my front bumper is almost coming off. Sliders as well, these are new, and they grab onto that Lexan body, keeping it in place. So also that is, I think, a good new upgrade compared to how they used to have it set up with two slots cut out of the body. And that is, of course, something that is prone to get damaged. This new setup is way smarter than that. This is where all of the action happens, underneath the body, because there's a lot of stuff over here that is reworked and rethought out just to make it a budget-friendly performer, because that is exactly what it is. That starts off in the front over here. Ignore the fact that there's no diff cover, because I just pulled that because I was extremely curious, and also to showcase what it looks like inside. You will see on the inside over there is a sintered gear. It is helically cut, and then that sits inside of 2 bearings. But the rest of it, the pinion, there's an oversized bearing option over there, because over there you actually have bushings. And bushings are used throughout this entire car rather than bearings. Now, why did I do that? A couple of reasons. Bushings do not require any maintenance. Bushings are a lot cheaper as well than bearings. But I think that especially the maintenance aspect, that's a big thing. This is a truck that you can submerge. You do not have to worry about re-greasing those bearings or oiling stuff up, or it potentially failing or seizing. So with that, it is very much a friendly option for people who are new to the hobby and who just want to have some fun. You will also see that there is a new axle design in the front. So this is a 2-piece axle, but there's also right now there is a steering servo mounted on top of the axle rather than in the chassis. If you want to, you can still move this steering servo to the chassis, but the way that it is set up out of the box is way more user friendly as well. This brings the center of gravity down a tiny bit. It also puts less strain on that steering servo, making it a bit more user friendly. And then in the long run, if you do want to like go more scale, you can mount it in the chassis. You can get rid of this 4-link suspension setup in the front, and you can go to a panhard setup with a 3-link. But for now it is set up like this, with that servo sitting on top of the axle. I see no problems over there. It gives you a good approach angle. It also makes it, well, like I said, puts less strain on that servo. You do have a metal servo horn. You do have metal links in all of your steering. So also with that behind the axle steering that they have going on. And with that, you have something that is really capable right out of the box. You will also see that there's universals in the front right from the factory. So that's a really nice part that in some brands you would find as an upgrade. And then right there they have not skipped anything, and they included those immediately. Lockable caster in the front, so that's also new and I think very welcome, especially seeing that those links are not adjustable. Having that adjustability then in those caster blocks in the front is very cool. These are plastic links both in the front and in the back. Again, 4-link in the front, 4-link in the back, and especially those links in the back, those are really huge. So there's a lot of webbing going on, making sure that this slides over any rough terrain with great ease, but also adding enough rigidity to avoid you asking why they added plastic links out of the box. It has a 12.8-inch wheelbase, which is of course non-adjustable with this being plastic links. Another part that you will find is different from any of the other Element trucks that you might be used to is these drive shafts. Usually with Element you will find that center spline is aluminum, and in this case that's also made from plastic. Seeing that this is a relatively light truck, I don't see anything wrong with it. Those diff covers as well, brand new, so you will see that there's 2 screws there, and those 2 screws, that's also why I pulled it. I was like, why did they do that? Because all of the mounting hardware for that pumpkin cover is in the back, but those 2 screws, they're there. I think you can mount some additional weight on the inside of the pumpkin, on the inside of the axle, or perhaps even on the outside by using those 2 screws. But I will just have to look at the optional list when that comes out. You will also see these wheels. These are mounted with some stainless steel hardware. There's also a lot of stainless steel hardware used in this new Stealth X gearbox. And why is this new? It's new because it has the motor currently mounted in the front, which I think is cool because it makes it a tiny bit more scale. It does, however, also mean that rather than having the battery tray in front, that now sits in the back. If you can run a shorty pack, I would do that. If you want to run a bigger pack, the larger battery tray is still included. This is also a case that you can split horizontally, which I think is really interesting. So with that, you can take the top off. You have easy access to all of the gears. You can grease it, do some maintenance, perhaps switch it out, because currently it is set up with a 1-to-1 ratio, so no overdrive out of the factory. But as per Stealth X gearbox, you can set it up with 5.7% overdrive from the top of my head, or a bit over 11% overdrive if you really want to overdrive that front. If you look at the frame rails, there's a couple more holes added to the back of them, which gives you the option to adjust the wheelbase between 11.4 and 12.8 inches. 12.8 is what it's set up out of the box. Despite it saying two different measurements on the box, it says 12.8 and 12.3, but this is set up 12.8 inches out of the box, and you can then tuck it down all the way to 11.4 by using some different links, of course. Shock hoops also, these are all new because these are solid. They used to be open, and seeing that they added some extra rigidity over here, I think is a pretty welcome thing. You will also see brand new shocks. So these have plastic shock bodies. That's of course to keep costs down. They do still have bleeder cap tops. So these caps are plastic, but they do have a bleeder screw. So if you want to top them up with some new shock oil and then bleed that shock oil out of it, it goes really easy with this. And then it has a pen spring suspension setup. So rather than having like a complete coilover with an adjustment ring, the spring is now non-adjustable, sits in the bottom of that shock absorber. And if you want to rebuild this and adjust it to any of the other Sendero setups, so whether that be with the factory team shocks that are bronze colored or the regular aluminum bodied shocks, you can just take them apart and mount any of those parts to set it up to your liking. Your actual receiver box sits on this side. It is fairly big, and it is coupled to this new FlySky radio. This is a new unit to be included with any of the Element RC trucks. Element RC trucks usually come with the XP130 radio that you're familiar with from a Team Associated, and this FlySky radio is a new 4-channel unit. It does lack a tiny bit in adjustability in it not having any dual rate adjustability, but it has this cap that falls over any of the trim buttons, so you don't have to worry about your trim being off when you have transported this inside of a backpack or whatnot. Again, it features a 3rd and a 4th channel, so if you want to put your lights on this and a winch, you can just go ahead and do that, and with that I think it is a nice versatile package. Your ESC sits on this side over here. This is a familiar looking reedy unit that comes with a Dean's plug. You can run this in 2 and 3S lipos, and if you want to, you can even use a nickel metal hydride pack. I'm not sure why you want to do that, but you take this plug out, you put it in the other hole, and then you are ready to run it on 1985's batteries. It comes with this block that you can plug 2 sets of LEDs in, and I think that that's a really nice clean look and some clever thinking to have that housed inside of this block. Overall, I think that this is a really good new offering in the lower budget of ready-to-run trail trucks. This Sport Edition without doubt will find a huge following in people who will be new to RC and who will be introduced to the Element RC brand. And I think that they have done a great job in offering something that has the potential to be upgraded in certain areas, and it is also really made with new users in mind, in it being as maintenance friendly as it is. I will go and charge a battery pack, most likely 3S, just to see what this thing can do. I will also submerge it because it is currently super wet out in the forest, and I'm curious how those bushings hold up, and I'm also very curious how quiet it actually runs. I hope you found this a useful first look at this all new Element RC Enduro Sendero Sport Edition. I think a really cool, welcome new budget offering in the ready-to-run trail market. There will be a link to this truck in the video description box where you can check it out and read more about all of the features, because without a doubt I have forgotten a thing or two. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Any questions, comments, hit me up in the box below. I always try to answer. If you have not subscribed yet, please do. Take care. Bye-bye.
Back on.